There we go.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Phantom Nebula Radio. Tonight is going to be great. We're talking about zombies here at the home of the extraterrestrial, the supernatural, the paranormal, the unexplained, and the mysterious. We're going to talk about everything under the sun about zombies tonight. That's why it's going to be a dedicated 2-hour special. We're going to be talking about the culture of zombies and how much they've had an impact, where they've even created a zombie almost subculture. We're going to be talking about the science of zombies. Could they actually happen? Could a zombie apocalypse theoretically happen in this day and age? We're going to be talking about the media involving zombies, video games, books, movies, everything everything you can think of with that. So, begin. I'm going to welcome my co-host for this night. Of course, my first co-host is Miguel, as usual. Hello, Miguel.
Hey, what's going on?
And my other co-host for tonight is my good friend Bill. He's a fellow, I guess you could say, zombologist is the good term. Bill, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good.
Excellent. We thought we were going to have some sort of technical difficulties around the whole thing with Skype and everything, but it looks like it's great. So welcome, Bill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, all right, let's get this. Okay, I'm going to use this quote all the time, and people are going to throw me on the stake for this one. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything already. Let's talk about voodoo. Would you say that's the origin of zombies? Is the whole voodoo side of it, where they pretty much made people to be actual zombies to do their work on the farms?
Is it toward me? You asking me?
Either or. Doesn't really make a difference.
I haven't read too much into the lore about it, but initially, I had heard there are a lot of practices. Like, if you want to go into the nonfiction parts, where during a ritual, someone would be buried alive, and then there would be a incantation or some sort of chanting, and then they would be dug up, and that would be apparently the whole ritual. That was the first that I had heard, in the actual practices of it, but it goes more in.
I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard of it, but there was a novel back in the day called White, or I'm sorry, not a novel, a movie called White Zombie. And White Zombie it's actually first off, it's a band, but it was a 1930s horror film with Bela Lugosi starring as the antagonist. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Bela Lugosi. He was an actor who did the first talking Dracula, and he was in many horror films under the sun and in Hollywood. Very famous actor. But that movie was probably the first zombie film, but it didn't have to do with the typical zombies that we know, but it was actually the voodoo zombies. Miguel, are you familiar with the voodoo zombies at all?
Somewhat. I always recall reading about or watching a program a long time ago regarding how the zombie culture originated in Haiti, where at least what we would call our modern day zombie culture, the whole concept of mind control, of a mindless corpse essentially, living as the term became, a living dead person. And that's from where, like I said, that I remember reading that there was actually some real life implications based on this legend. I recall them mentioning something about a certain poison that was used to induce a trance-like state in a person, in which they would, wander aimlessly, seeming to be mindless, essentially, which has become nowadays our quintessential idea of what a zombie is truly like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just think that if we're going to talk about voodoo zombie, probably should also talk about how exactly they do this and where exactly the whole, voodoo origins came. Zombie actually is another name for a voodoo snake god, Dambalawido, which is originated from the Niger-Congo area, which is where a lot of slaves were taken to Haiti, and where the whole voodoo subculture, or not subculture, the whole voodoo religion really thrived when they were moved to Haiti. The idea is that they even pretended to bury these people and claiming them, and then people were seeing them up and walking around years later. And then apparently they were given very powerful drugs and then snuck onto sugarcane fields and were made to do to work almost as free labor, slave labor, but without the penalty of having slave rebellions. It was done via tetrodotoxin. It's a lethal toxin found in pufferfish. So ironically enough, there was a story about someone eating a pufferfish, and I guess eating the wrong part or something like that, and ending up almost buried alive because they just slowed their heart down to the point. Anyone? Did I lose both of you? That would be a tragedy if I was.
Here, sorry.
Okay. I don't know if I lost Miguel because he's on a landline and it might come in and out. Miguel, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Why, did you get cut out?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I was paused and I had that brief moment of silence, and I was getting worried that I lost both of my co-hosts at once, and that would have been a disaster. I would have been doing internet juggling, or internet radio juggling, and that would have been the show for tonight, or I would have been talking about zombies with myself.
Right.
So, have you heard about that story, but where the guy ate the pufferfish and ended up being almost buried alive? And
I actually believe that was the aforementioned story that I was referencing. I don't really have too much of a working knowledge on it because, as I mentioned, it's been years since I've seen that program. All I remember was incredibly interesting. However, like I mentioned earlier, it was supposedly some sort of toxin which resulted in real life, quote unquote, zombification. And this, like I said, laid the groundwork for that mindlessness that we now know to be, what we perceive as a fictional zombie.
apparently, I was reading something earlier that there was someone who did testing of zombie powder samples, and only one of them contained any significant amount of TTX, which is the tetrodotoxin. And even if the powder contained large quantities, the effects of the poison are not consistent with the reports of the zombified plantation workers. Because there's one man, which is Wade Davis, is the person who came up with this idea of these zombie plantation workers. They also pointed out, as a doctor, pointed out that the main symptoms of TTX poisoning, which are total muscular flaccidity, inability to move, breathing difficulties, and the lack of oxygen to the brain. But they would seem completely inconsistent to the image of a shambling zombie slave kind of shuffling around at from midnight to sunset. And it'd be quite hard to do any work if you had total muscular flaccidity, inability to move, couldn't breathe, and completely lack of oxygen to the brain. Eventually you'd probably die and wouldn't be able to do anything at all.
Pete, now moving on to, as we were talking about, the real-life origins of zombification, do you mind if I start to get into the scientific implications in the animal kingdom, as I was mentioning to you earlier?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We actually, I found Miguel found it. Ironically enough, as we were doing the research for this program, and after we had decided that this was going to be our program tonight, Miguel stumbled across an article of proof of concept of in the animal world that there are zombie-like things and such. I would have mentioned what exactly it is, but I'd like for him just to go through the list. Just give us a name, and then we could talk about the specific ones.
All right, well, I got this from this Facebook page called From Quarks to Quasars. It's actually really interesting. If you want to look it up, you can find the link on there. There's 3 mentioned, quote-unquote, zombie parasites. I'm just going to call them zombie parasites for simplicity purposes. The first one is called Eucochloridium. It's a parasite that infects snails and completes its life cycle throughout the turning the snail into a prey, into a very, very susceptible prey for birds to eat. In which case they reproduce inside the bird's body and life cycle starts all over again. The second is let's see if I can pronounce these names. Ophiocordyceps, which is one of the more famous ones, which, long story short, will infect an ant, cause a worker ant to climb atop a large leaf, bite onto it, and then actually grow a spore out of its head, and then infect the air around it and infect other ants with said spore. The third is polydnaviruses. I want to say that's how it's pronounced. It's actually a wasp.
Polydnaviruses.
Polydnaviruses. Okay. Polydnaviruses, which is actually a parasitoid wasp, which infects caterpillars. Long story short, it's your atypical parasite. It eats off the body of the caterpillar, then eventually burrows out and compels the caterpillar to cocoon the larvae until they grow to maturity, and also compels the caterpillar to protect said larvae. So yeah, those are the real main 3, Pete. Any interesting opinions you have on these, or?
Every time I look at these pictures, I feel like something's crawling on me. I hate pictures of bugs so much because I went to scroll down and I went to go look at the polydnavirus, and it just makes me feel like something's on me. But interestingly enough, you brought up the cordyceps fungus. That will actually come up in a little bit when we decide to talk about media, because that is the cause of the breakdown of civilization and infection in the video game The Last of Us, which is excellent, and they did a really good job in portraying it and why it did what it did and everything. So let's leave that one alone, and we'll focus on the other 2, because that's just I just think that one will become more important later on. And if we talked about cordyceps, it would lead down the road of, hey, let's talk about The Last of Us at the same point. So did you talk about the parasite that takes over snails?
Yeah, that was the first one. It's pronounced Leucochloridium, I believe is how it's pronounced. Which
I'm not good with Latin, so it's okay. We're not going to judge.
It's right. I'm not a biologist, so I can't pronounce these names. Long story short, it infects a snail from the droppings of birds, specifically robins. What happens is the snails feed on said droppings and ingest the parasite. The parasite then enters the snail's body. It infects. Let's see, what does it say right here? It invades the snail's eye stalks, cause it to grow very swollen, make it a very visible target. It parasites its embryos. The parasite pumps its embryos into the snail's eye stalks, then causes it to actually find high ground to be visible to said birds whose fecal matter the snails ate in the first place, which then proceed to eat the snails again, ingesting the parasite, at which point the parasite reproduces inside of the bird, and then, gets defecated out, and life cycle starts all over again.
Creepy. That is eerie. There is something that exists. Go ahead.
Imagine that there's something that can, compel you to be eaten, literally compel you to walk out into, the middle of nowhere and say, hey, fresh food right here.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Bill, about these three things? I did send you the article earlier, so you did get a chance to take a look at it. What do you think about the real-life examples of parasites and zombie-esque fungi in the animal kingdom?
They are very interesting. I didn't get to look through the last one, but I got to the first and the second one. I will say, though, the first one surprised me the most. One thing I did find out is that when it infects the eyes, one of the most interesting things that caught my attention was that not only does it, swell up the eyes, but there's like a gyrating motion where it actually pumps back and forth and moves to replicate the motion of a maggot, which is the robin's favorite food. So I thought that was very incredible. That not only does it just one static where it just floods and pumps into the eyeballs, that it actually moves and keeps in constant motion.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about how fascinating and amazing the animal kingdom is, and it's beautiful, the world that God created and everything, how crazy the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and everything under the sun is great. But it just creeps me out that there is stuff like this, and sometimes it just makes me question why. That's the big question I have. So let's move on. I know that the voodoo stuff wasn't very interesting to some people, but I know that in order to talk about zombies, you have to start from the beginning, and that's where everything came from. That's where George Romero got his ideas, and that's where we will be heading now. The origin of the zombie of modern day would actually be George Romero. I'm sure both of you are familiar with George Romero.
Yes, I've seen a lot of films using a lot of his ideas, and I was really kind of ignorant to the fact that he made multiple films. I thought that he only made one, and I did more research into it, and I found out that he did a little bit more, which I thought was interesting.
He's actually done a lot more other than just Night of the Living Dead, the Of the Dead movies. He did one that was actually remade quite a few years ago called The Crazies. The remake, very bad, not very well done. The original, I thought it was really good and had really good themes. one thing before we go on about Romero. Actually, two things. First, a lot of his movies actually talk about. Actually, this is a theme in a lot of zombie stuff that people don't really understand or don't really comprehend, that we're going to get into when we talk about these other things later on. But I want to mention it now as a little taste, a little tidbit. The Night of the Living Dead, or I'm sorry, the Of the Dead movies have a lot of social implications. They talk about a lot of they have a lot of deep political and social and cultural themes. And a fact about Night of the Living Dead, it was the first novel to feature a black protagonist. And that was very, very big for the time. It was the late 60s, 1968, and it was a very, very, very controversial thing to make the protagonist black. And do you think spoilers are okay, considering that it's 2013, the movie aired in 1968? What do you think, guys? Do you think it's okay to spoilers?
I'm completely fine with that.
I think people have had 45 years to watch the movie. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good.
At the end of Night of the Living Dead, after surviving the night, he comes out of the house and they shoot him. And they didn't even question. They just assumed that this man's a zombie. But you kind of realize that it's because he's black. And it was done in, the movie takes place in the racist South. So, but moving on. And the second fact, I actually met George Romero. I went to Monster Mania a few years ago, and he was there, and I didn't get his autograph or anything. I just kind of shook his hand, said, "Oh, Mr. Romero, I love your movies, and I love horror movies. I used to hate them as a kid, but now I love them, and blah 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 blah." And he wasn't really with it anymore. I mean, he's great, and I think his newest films are great, but it was just a really cool thing to meet someone that was so big on your childhood, and how many times I've watched Dawn of the Dead alone. But I think now is a good time to take a short break, and I'm going to leave you with this to lead into the next one. We're going to talk about reasons why a zombie apocalypse could happen. And how would you feel that if you were infected with a parasite and half the population of the world is infected with it, and it has the possibility of affecting your mood and affecting everything else, and maybe making the jump to controlling your entire emotions and brain. So we're going to leave you with that. We're going to take a few-minute break, and thank you for listening to Phantom Nebula Radio. back to Phantom Nebula Radio. Those tracks are brought to you by TechnoAxe, which is a royalty-free music creator who shares his music on the web, and you're welcome to go and download it and use it. And we're using it for bumper music and intro music, and it's some fantastic stuff, and people really digging it. So, to reiterate before we go back into the topic, again, you are welcome to call the station, and the number is 714-364-4734, or you can click the Skype button next to such thing, and you're welcome to call in, share any story about the extraterrestrial, the supernatural, the paranormal, the unexplained, and the mysterious. These are unscreened open lines, meaning we will not screen your calls, and you're welcome to share your story no matter how weird or how unsettling you think they may be. We're here to listen to your stories, and we're here to make sure you feel comfortable listening to them. This is a no judgment zone, and you're welcome to tell whatever you feel. So, before we go into what I teased before the break, I have a question for each of you. And it's going to be quite a doozy because it is going to top into psychology. And unfortunately, Andy will not be around for this one. So, okay. I'll ask each one of you individually to make it a little bit, so I could disperse that, and then we could maybe discuss it, why or why not. Okay, so I'll go to Miguel first. Okay, say a zombie apocalypse happened, and you were traveling with a group of people, and including a loved one. What would you do if one of that loved ones was bitten and the virus was transmitted to them? Would you kill them to spare their suffering? Or would you endanger yourself in hopes that you could find a cure and possibly endanger the rest of the group and having to deal with their repercussions for you wanting to keep them alive?
Straight up, I'd blow their head off. I'm not going to lie. I'm a logical person. It's basic human self-preservation. I'm not going to, granted, if I were in the situation, maybe I'm speaking a little bit rashly here. Maybe I would, be overcome with emotion and, oh no, close family relative, I believe there's some way of bringing you back, even though, deep in my mind I know there's, logically and reasonably no feasible hope of bringing them back. I mean, for this preservation of myself and everyone around me, I would blow their head off right off the bat. I mean, I know that's what they would want, and as a matter of fact, I would want to do it before they turned into a zombie, before I would, see them, degrade as a human personality, as an individual being. I mean, to see them go through that suffering and watch them, turn, going from human to creature, it would be for the best. I wouldn't take the chance. Granted, I'm not going to, he might have possibly been bit, let's kill him right off the bat, but, if it's pretty obvious at that point, there's no choice in my mind.
Even if it was your dad or your brother?
Yeah.
All right. That was
I'm sorry. We don't get along all that well anymore. But he's still my family, and I still would.
I love your dad, so I can't imagine doing that to your dad. All right, yeah. So let's Bill. What do you think?
Okay. It's always a tough thing to do. On one hand, I want to say that I could go the route of Shaun of the Dead. On the other hand, it could be easier to, upon request as well. If they're telling you that they don't want to deal with it anymore, if they tell you that they want you to end it, I think that helps a little bit in your choice to what you want to do. Because of course you'd want to spare them, but of course arguing with them would be a little bit more difficult if they actually want you to do what's best and say, and help them out. One of the kind of what's the what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, or the situation where they don't want to go on and they want you to help them out. That helps. And then, I mean, it also comes down to breaking down what the virus is and what kind of infection it is too. If it is curable or if it's not. If it's not curable, then of course the only option would be to get just no way of putting it nicely, and ending their suffering. And on the other hand, if you don't know, I'm gonna say it would be tough for me, but I would probably agree with Miguel, and I would end it. It's tough.
That was why I wanted to ask. It's a tough question. Do you harm the? I mean, it's hard to look at the person you love in the face, regardless if it's not the same person anymore. It's hard to just be able to shoot them casually like that. It's just, I think I would hope for a cure. That's the thing I was trying to say. There may be a cure. We don't know that. You don't know. I mean, it all depends. It could be something that's completely incurable, but there's always hope. If you cling to hope, then there you run the risk of endangering other people. So, do you risk other people that you love, or do you, for that one person? It's a very, very, very hard situation to even remotely think about. So, someone left an article. Justin left an article on the page called about this drug called scopolamine, or known as devil's breath in Colombia, and it is called the world's scariest drug. Apparently, it is a tasteless, odorless drug slipped into alcoholic drinks of unsuspecting bar patrons, and it is a zombie drug where they can kidnap people, and it has no actual legitimate medical uses other than for the treatment of motion sickness and tremors of Parkinson's, but it's actually known more for this. Interestingly enough, Joseph Mengele used it in interrogations as a kind of truth serum, and the CIA, lo and behold, is amazing and is as angelic as the CIA is, administered doses of the drug during its controversial behavior engineering programs in the 1960s, which it was. This fact was according to a book by John D. Marks called "The Search for the Manchurian Candidate." Since the 1970s now, the Colombian criminals have used this in order to rape women, empty houses, abduct people. It's interesting because this is almost like the actual real-life proven version of the zombie powder that we were talking about before. That is some scary stuff right there. That they can slip something into your drink, and you would never know it's there, and they can just turn you into a zombie and walk out with you or do whatever they want with you, and you would have no idea, because reports say that people would have it slipped into their drinks, and then 2 to 3 hours, they wouldn't know what's going on. They would wake up on a park bench 3 days later and not even know. It's scary stuff. It's like almost like, I guess, like the date rape drug on crack. No puns or jokes intended there, but that is pretty much what it is. That is a scary thought that you could travel to. I mean, that is why it's scary to travel to other countries. You would go to, you're into a bar, but then again, you gotta be pretty dumb to go into a bar in Colombia as an American. You might as well just paint a sign on your bag saying, "Please kidnap me. I have money, and we will ransom you. Send us money so we can get me back." So I sent you the article, both Miguel and Rob. So what do you guys think?
I actually just started to read it over just a couple seconds ago because computer issues. But I mean, I've heard about this before, but I was unaware that it was such a potent drug, to be honest. I mean, I know I've heard of as you mentioned, the date rape drug, leaving similar knocking you out characteristics, but this is just, scary, that the fact that, you're not unconscious, you're not, you're not being manipulated, and not being in control at all. You're in control, but you're not at the same time. You're susceptible to any sort of persuasion. You lost your free will. You lost your memory. It's frightening, honestly. I haven't, like I said, I was unaware that the implications of this were so strong. But yeah,
Yeah, I have to agree. It's very scary to see something that, you hear a lot of the times that there are drugs that will be slipped into people's drinks and can cause you to get drowsy and then be knocked out, but it's very scary to think of a drug that will essentially put you on autopilot with blinders on, so you can't see what's going on. You don't really know what's going on until after what happened. You kind of get an idea of what happened to you. It's very interesting and scary. People don't like to not be in control of themselves, so it's very scary.
Absolutely. Thanks to Justin for the article. I really, really appreciate it. So now let's go to talking about reasons why a zombie apocalypse could happen. There are more than several reasons, I'd say more than 5 reasons, maybe even more that people could think of. And we're going to talk about a few that I've seen and I've read on an article. And we're going to go through them and what we all think of this, and just how creepy some of these really, really are. We can actually go, and we're going to go into more details about the follow-ups of what would happen if a zombie apocalypse did happen. Next Monday's show, we're going to be talking about the collapse of civilization and the effects of that. So let's go into the first one, brain parasite. Okay, remember how I did tease everyone that we mentioned that half the human population on Earth could be infected with a brain parasite? Well, it's correct, and it's called toxoplasmosis. And do you think you're infected? Maybe. 50-50 chance, because half the world has a chance of going insane or seeing a change in their personality. You would never know. Rats, humans, not that different. You may think that we're different. We have a higher sense of knowledge. We have opposable thumbs, and we kill each other a little bit more than rats, but overall we're a little bit similar, which is why we use rats to experiment on drugs. Toxoplasmosis actually affects rats to the point where they have no instincts or self-preservation at all. So all it would take is for toxoplasmosis to evolve, and there goes half the world instantly going into the it wouldn't fit the dictionary definition of zombies, but it would definitely be a scary thought if half the world suddenly went completely insane. What do you think?
I've actually read the same article as you did about this, and to be completely honest, I'm not all that worried about a lot of the things I saw in there. This is probably the one that I'm at least I would say the very least worried about. The facts on here feel just a little bit skewed. First of all, the fact that it's a parasite in general automatically implies that it's going to have a lot longer of an evolutionary cycle than, say, a virus or a bacteria. That being said, though, there's really not many facts mentioned on on the actual parasite itself. I mean, it seems to have, the typical characteristics of, so-called zombie parasites, as we mentioned. It infects something, it wants to be eaten, and then, life cycle continues as it's, defecated out and blah, 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 but with rats and cats instead of, snails and robins this time. Now, they say, oh, well, that there's studies that show that half the world is infected with toxoplasmosis, and that it could be shown to affect personality and and a person's mental characteristics. Those claims are so vague. Honestly, I kind of liken it to the whole dihydrogen monoxide claim. If you know what I'm talking about, right, Pete?
Yeah, I did see that.
Dihydrogen monoxide.
I've heard that one too.
Yeah, if none of you have heard of the whole dihydrogen monoxide claim, long story short, it's something that's found in our water supplies. It's a main component in acid rain and the majority of illicit drugs and poisons and such. The overwhelming majority of homicide and domestic abuse cases have been associated with dihydrogen monoxide, and taking in large quantities of it can result in death. In fact, will most likely result in death. Now, if you don't know, dihydrogen monoxide is just water, and it's just a little experiment. I mean, it's a little a little experiment to kind of show to you that that a lot of things can be what's it called? That a lot of things can be kind of skewed out of proportion a little bit, very vague facts. So that's honestly my opinion on that. It doesn't really worry me. So yeah.
Okay. That is a shocking fact. I have actually read that article a few years back. I remember going over it and doing some research into it. A little bit of shock factor though. Half the population. A few years ago, actually, maybe no more than 2. Our population actually topped 7 billion. So that would mean approximately 3.5 billion people would be affected by this, and then ultimately succumb to the change, and then be, for lack of a better term, zombified. It's a lot to think about. Just looking up on a website, I just went to a website to check and see what it was. I went to worldometers.info. I don't know the accuracy, but it's obvious, it's past 7 billion, and that's just so far. There's a lot to think about, and of course, when you think about the whole blown out of proportion thing and stretched truths, that's also one thing that you have to think of. You have to filter what information you take in. But this parasite, when you think about the way that it could mutate itself, or it could evolve and change and become something more, where there is a huge possibility that the apocalypse, for zombification could happen. That's something to prepare for, if you're skeptical or paranoid.
Oh, absolutely. It's just, I remember reading an article about a mathematician who came up with a formula about an infection rate, and a 50% infection rate for the population is chump change compared to what this man predicted. He predicted that there would be about an infection rate of anywhere between 80 to 95%, based on a normal zombie apocalypse, with your standard bites transmitted, etc., etc. So into that, we'll go into the next one, and that is, we briefly talked about. Well, actually, we did a good amount of this. Neurotoxins, which is zombies from Haiti, zombies created by Colombian drug cartels, drugs that they slip into your drinks, stuff like that. Not don't really need to go over this considering we already talked about it, but it's already happened, so it's technically feasible. But I just don't see this being a reliable thing for it being overspread, because zombies technically can't be spread by bite, and it couldn't cause a zombie apocalypse. All right, so let's move on. A real virus, and if I had to make an example of this virus, it would be: have either of you seen, or any of you for that matter, have any of you seen 28 Days Later?
Actually, no, I haven't. But I mean, I've read about it. I know, the synopsis of the whole movie series. So I mean, you're free to talk about it to me.
I've seen it.
The Rage virus. If you haven't seen it in the movie, it is a virus that turns human beings into mindless killing machines. The way it worked in the movie, not novel, was it was a virus that originated, that was being tested on monkeys for something, and a bunch of PETA types broke into the lab, released the monkeys, they massacred the people, and then the guy spread the virus, and that's how the Rage virus began. This kind of started the whole fast zombies thing, because the ones in 28 Days Later could run and think, and the interesting part about this is that it was their blood that infected you, not a bite. That if they just bled on you and it got into your skin or anything, it would kill you. Interestingly enough, at one point in the movie, there is a raven that has blood on it, and it drips blood into one of the man's eyes, and that's how he turns. Sounds ridiculous. It was actually quite cool, and it was actually quite interesting. But the movie was great. But this one is a real danger, because we have mad cow disease and more, and just regular mad cow disease in humans causes such symptoms as changes in walking habits, hallucinations, lack of coordination, muscle twitches, myoclonic jerks or seizures, rapidly developing delirium and dementia. And though it is rare, all it takes is to make the jump to humans full time and make a complete mutation. So what do you think?
It's very frightening. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I personally feel that a virus is most likely the best possible, feasible chance of a zombie, infection, zombie outbreak to somehow come about. I feel that something like neurotoxins, parasites, really don't have the transmittability of something like a virus that can cause something globally, such as a pandemic. If you think back to the great pandemic in right after World War I, something that can reach as far as the outskirts of Siberia. Viruses are known for being fast evolving, as well as very easily transmissible. A lot of them are transmitted through air. In fact, the largest facet of zombie, lore is the fact that zombies can't transmit through air. But if they could, I guarantee you we'd all be dead in very, very quickly in the case of zombie apocalypse. In fact, as very unserious of a zombie movie as it was, I absolutely loved Zombieland, and there was a brief mention of it starting out as mad cow disease making a jump into humans, and essentially, doing exactly what it does to cows, causing mental issues. However, that being said, real quickly, I want to mention, though, I actually feel that the larger candidate for such a virus would actually be the rabies virus. I feel that the rabies virus is actually probably more likely. It's spread through either a bite, sometimes a claw, a scratch, from the claw of a rabid raccoon or dog or something like that. It causes victims to be angry and very, causes them to mentally, essentially it agitates the nervous system. It causes them to go after other living things. It causes them to act strange, to walk strange, foam at the mouth. I mean, essentially it is, in my opinion, the virus that would be most closely associated with the whole zombie possibility.
Yes. It's very interesting when you think about mad cow disease and how similar. If you read these symptoms off to someone without telling them what the disease is, at least my first thought, what comes to mind is that I think of a zombie. When you think of people who, a virus that causes people to do things like this, I would think that it would be some sort of zombie thing. And I agree that all it takes is a jump to humans. When you think about it, though, for a virus to do these things, it's altering the connections in the brain. The way that you think and do these things, and that's what kind of gets me thinking. It gets me interested. Is thinking how easy it would be if all you had to do were just change a couple connections and put some extra chemicals where they shouldn't be, because you got to think, when you get angry, what's happening in your brain? Are chemicals being released, or are you making different connections that are causing you to feel that way? And I'm not a scientist on that, so I don't quite know. But if that were true, then a virus that takes advantage of that is quite deadly and quite interesting. So all these things are very scary.
Oh yeah, of course. When I mentioned this infection rate earlier about there was 90 to 95% infection rate referred to a type of virus like this. So this would be scary because, ladies and gentlemen, fast zombies. Think of something that is just as fast, if not faster, because I know that I'm pretty slow, wants to rip your throat out and kill you and eat you alive, and has the thinking capability and listening and thought process of a human, opposable thumbs, human strength, and is the greatest, the biggest.
I'm sorry. You just jogged my memory before. One of the most interesting things that when you consider it, is that because it's a virus, it takes advantage of a fresh body, fresh tissue, non-decaying. So you have the strength of a normal person. As for an average zombie with decaying tissue won't quite have the same strength. So it's taking hold of a live host rather than killing the host and reanimating them and having to work with dead tissue. It's keeping them alive, so you have all of the normal stats of a person. So when it infects a bodybuilder, you kind of get your typical super zombie there, because they can make use of his extra mass and power.
Yeah, I mean it's just a scary thought to have this kind of thing, because even just rabies could make this jump. If you ever have read anything or seen anything about people who have been infected with rabies, it's scary. It's a really scary thought that someone that is just like you, except much more primal, because down to primal instincts, we are murderers and hunters and gatherers and such. And humans are so imagine bringing out the most evil of our darkest desires, our deepest sin, just manifesting itself. And they're fast, they're smart, and they're scary. And with that, we're gonna go into another break, and I'm gonna tease tease the next part because I love doing that. I love teasing you all who are listening with tidbits of information for the next part. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to create your own undead? No, not a necromancer. No, not like an Ed Gein kind of wear someone's skin kind of deal. More like reanimation. And if you've ever seen a movie about it, or maybe read the book about it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We'll be back in just a few minutes on Phantom Nebula Radio.
Hello. We there?
I cannot. I'm sorry, everybody. I have just been talking to myself for the past minute. I unmuted everybody except myself, so I apologize for that. So welcome back to Phantom Nebula Radio. For our last hour, we're going to finish our topic about what we were talking about now, the science and of how these things could actually happen. Again, on-screen open lines. You're welcome to call in and chat. The number is 714-364-4734. And once again, this is Phantom Nebula Radio, the home of the extraterrestrial, the supernatural, the paranormal, the unexplained, and the mysterious. So, our other co-host, Bill, had to leave. That was it for the evening. So, once again, we're going to thank him for joining us this evening, and that was a fantastic time for him joining us, and I really hope that he can join us again. I believe he is interested in joining us again for the Collapse of the Civilization episode next Monday. So let's finish up this topic, and let's go into what I was teasing before the break. Reanimation. There is a movie called The Reanimator where he does, wouldn't you know, reanimates. It's based on a H.P. Lovecraft novel, actually, called the Herbert West Reanimator, and it's pretty much what you can infer from it. He reanimates his wife, and it really goes downhill from there. So, what do you think of the implications of reanimation? Because not only do you have the implications of the dangers of it, zombie uprising or such and such, you also have the dangers of, do you really want to bring back the dead? Human transmutation, if I might add.
Well, I'm sitting here, I'm reading over the same article that you sent me, and this whole concept of, as they call it, neurogenesis, essentially, it's the idea that we could regrow dead brain tissue or destroy the parts of brain tissue that make us human. So essentially, what you're doing is you are either bringing back a dead, human, a corpse, whatever, and only possibly giving it the basic functions it needs to survive, the part of the brain that tells you to breathe, tells your heart to beat, that tells your stomach to digest. You're bringing back that portion of the brain, or conversely, you're killing, as they mentioned here, parts of the brain such as, let's see here, where was it? The brain cortex, the cortex that, as it says here, is what makes humans, which leaves essentially basic motor functions and primitive instincts. You wouldn't have a personality. All you'd be is a mindless corpse that essentially can, just survive, but not much else. In fact, you heard of the chicken with no head, right?
Right, how chickens can survive with their heads.
Yeah, well, especially the one particular case of the chicken that lived for 18 months without a head. Have you heard of that?
I actually have heard somewhat of it, but no, I really haven't. Please explain.
The particular instance, I'm going to click on this, see if they have the year. It was a long time ago. His name was Mike the Headless Chicken. Long story short, there was a chicken who was, being slaughtered for food, had his head cut off by, farmer or whoever, and actually because of the way that the chicken's head was shaped, part of the chicken's brainstem actually extends into its neck. In that being so, the farmer accidentally left the brainstem intact while severing the head, and for whatever reason, the chicken didn't bleed out and die, and the chicken actually survived for over a year and a half without a head. Reason being, it could still breathe, it could still, tell its heart to beat, It was fed. It couldn't eat on its own. It was fed through a little feeding tube and all that. It was used as a little circus little. I shouldn't say circus. A little sideshow attraction. Come see the freaky chicken living without a head. It doesn't do anything. It just responds to pain. You smack it. Push it over, squeeze its foot. It responds. It can respond to pain. It can it can move on its own. It doesn't have a head. And that's essentially one of the big proponents here, saying that neurogenesis is possible. I mean, if it can happen in a chicken, it can happen in a person, right? However, this in a widespread scenario, being able to somehow do this to vast quantities of individuals and then control them, I don't know, it just doesn't seem likely to me,
Yeah, who knows? A witch could pop up and you would never know.
There's actually, another thing mentioning, neurogenesis and, certain portions of the brain being destroyed. I really forget what the phenomena is known as. However, the brain is actually more adaptable as an organ than you would first be led to believe. You believe that the brain doesn't have a traditional structure. A human's not going to behave in the traditional sense. However, there have been people who have been known to have. There was one particular instance where a person lost over 90% of his brain matter, and somehow still managed to function as a normal individual. Sure, he was supposedly, mentally handicapped. However, he could still function, could still feel emotion. The brain can actually adapt certain areas and readapt itself, reassign areas of the brain to perform different functions. That being said, that also questions the feasibility of neurogenesis. Who's to say that the human brain wouldn't be able to survive and readapt itself with less mass than it once had?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I feel very uncomfortable thinking about the implications of bringing him back to dead. So, with that being said, let's move on to the final one. Nanomachines. And if you're not familiar with nanomachines, they are a technology that science apparently engineered to make you terrified of the future. They are like tiny silicone-based robots that the hope is for the future medical applications. They can put them inside your body and eliminate tumors and repair cells that are damaged and all of this cool stuff. But they haven't told you the downside. The downside of a nanomachine is that they have to self-replicate. They have to be able to make more of each other. So the downside is that they could somehow glitch and create more of themselves to the point where the entire planet is covered in something called gray goo, or it has the possibility of having nanobots in your brains, and then someone reprograms them or messes with them, and then they camp up in your brain. They shut down everything that is you, like the cortex, but leave the stem intact, and they can. There you go, an entire undead army. I mean, okay, well, not actually undead, but zombie army, cannibalistic, crazy people that could do whatever they want.
As a scientist, I've read a lot into nanobots. Essentially, when you think of nanobots, what I personally envision an artificial virus, essentially. Viruses are, very simple little things that have very simple little programming. They're, designed to do this, designed to do that. Nanobots are essentially man-made versions of the same. However, instead of being designed simply with the biological purpose of, reproduction and survival, they instead can be reprogrammed to do whatever we want. We're no longer bound by the, Darwinian prospect of simply reproducing and surviving, So therefore we are actually, if you consider viruses to be life, we're essentially creating life. And that goes back to the whole, mad cow disease and rabies viruses, which in a very primitive way survive by infecting a host and reproducing within the host and then transmitting to different hosts. Could this be a way nanobots being, essentially, as I mentioned, artificial viruses could evolve and adapt themselves? And that being said, being in such large quantities as nanobots would have to be, in order to get anything done, I mean, could you ever possibly control them all? Could you ever possibly eliminate them all? Another thing to consider, too, would it be, at such a small scale, I mean, granted, machines and technology keeps constantly becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. You also have to think of the possibility of nanobots being able to operate in such a complex manner. Would they possibly be able to, locate and eliminate specific portions of brain functions and control your body in such a way? I mean, sure, you can train them to locate and destroy certain cells and viruses, but I mean, how would you be able to, like I said, maybe it's going to be possible one day, but as for now, I'm going to question, how would it be possible for them to be able to locate the precise cells they need to attack, the precise cells that they need to, replenish, and the cells that they need to destroy with such complex coding in such a small little microscopic package? Like I said, could it be possible one day? Yeah, sure. Like I said, technology is getting smaller and more intricate all the time, and if we start coding things using DNA, if we code nanobots using DNA sequences, sure, that might be completely possible. And that's my opinion on that. I'm kind of skeptical.
I understand, but the science of nanomachines has completely been established to be completely sound and has a great, bright future, depending on how you look at it. And I think nanomachines are going to be very important, and I don't think it'll end up to be the gray goo thing, because science has never backfired before, correct? But, all right.
Yeah, it almost did.
Several times. But, all right, let's move on to probably the favorite part for everybody for the next about 40 minutes. The media, the pop culture, how important zombies have become to culture, and how awesome it's been to see the rise of the zombie movie, the rise of the zombie video game, and we'll talk about its roots. But first we'll talk about probably actually is relevant to this year, because there was a movie called World War Z that came out about 2 months ago, right? Yeah, like July.
Yeah, it was pretty recent.
And it was actually based off of a book by, Miguel, why don't you tell us about it?
All right, well, World War Z, I read this a long time ago. It was honestly one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It was different in a way. It was written by Max Brooks. It was based off of a previous work of his called The Zombie Survival Guide, which in itself is a pretty amazing book. World War Z is actually written in a non-traditional format. It doesn't follow, a drama, a specific amount of people, heartbreak and people, action and whatnot. The book I'm talking about now. The book is actually written in more of an interview-style documentary format. The so-called narrator of the book, I'm going to try to not give any spoilers here because it's very recent, and while the movie did come out, the movie's very unrelated to the book, so I'm not going to, even if I did reveal the details of the book, it wouldn't really spoil anything there. However, long story short, a narrator goes around interviewing people. You find out where the virus originated from. He goes all the way, different various places of the world, and it mixes a very potent combination of both the history of the quote-unquote World War Z as well as the new world, the way the world has become. And it does it in a very logical manner. In such a widespread virus as the zombie virus that supposedly, infected the world in this book, for such a widespread virus, now you see people inhabiting very previously uninhabitable locations. You see humans going to great lengths to develop shelters and defenses and fortifications. The entire political landscape is redrawn, and by the end, you see the failing of our current military system against the undead and why it failed, and then you see our adaptation. You see the way we adapted and our response to the whole zombie outbreak. You hear about people, you hear distrust, people who don't believe the rumors because of zombie outbreaks because it's coming from their enemies. You hear people trying to capitalize on it by selling, fake drugs that supposedly are going to, render you immune to such a virus. It's while it isn't a drama or action book, so to speak, it does manage to give a broad spectrum of what's going on in the world, as well as a mix of letting you tap into the various human experiences going on through it. So in other words, it does touch your heart in a way. You do feel for the people who have suffered as part of the war. However, it doesn't, it's not like a heart-wrenching, love novel or anything like that. It's very, very, it's packed full of information. It's an amazing book. I mean, if there were any book I could recommend someone interested in, well, the kind of stuff that you'd be interested in if you were listening to this show in general, I would recommend for you to read this book. That being said, Pete, you want to talk about the movie, or?
I actually want to touch up a little bit more on the book. I mean, the biggest surprise to me when I read the book was actually first who it was written by. If anyone's familiar with Mel Brooks, History of the World, History of the World is a big thing, but he also, okay, I'm sorry, he did The Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, History of the World, Spaceballs, Robin Hood Men in Tights. He's just a big comedic thing. His son wrote World War Z. And it actually isn't even a comedic book. It's actually got deep political tones, wouldn't you say?
Oh, God, yes, so very much. It goes well into how, I mean, like I said, the implications from the smallest little details about how everyday life has changed to the largest implications on how the world, has either united or broken and changed as a result of this war. How, petty political squabbling over power has turned into international unification and, international zombie squads, patrolling the Arctic and to kill frozen zombies and protecting the coastlines, It's very, very high political implications.
Yeah, it talks about, it's also a reference to, panic set in by, the Cold War and stuff like that because, people didn't want to believe that this was coming, and it takes a reference to also apparently to the George Bush administration, and has a little political implications like that. But for the most part, I mean, it's got a lot of political undertones and themes that you wouldn't normally associate with a zombie novel. But I don't want to spoil it because it's just an excellent book, and I really don't want to spoil something like that. So check it out. It's called World War Z. Read it. Don't watch it. We'll go into. I don't even know. I can't even word it.
One thing I want to mention, though. One thing I want to mention before we go on, though. Also, it's not an incredibly long read. There's literally, I want to say close to zero filler in the book, and that's one of the things I loved about it the most. It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. It's divided into small little sections for stories. Stories are revisited multiple times. It's one of the most excellent books I've ever read. It says here 342 pages, not some crazy long, 1,000-page novel, not some crazy short Animal Farm or something like that either.
Oh, yeah. The movie wasn't bad. The movie just wasn't.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan.
It was a total bastardization of the novel. It took the novel that was, excellent, heart-wrenching at points, and very well scripted, and completely non-traditional storytelling, as Miguel said. The idea was that it was about a reporter who doing a commission from the UN talking about, lo and behold, World War Z, whatever you want to say, and it tells the story of the war. Through his interviews. So, he interviews people in an order that tells the story of the entire war, but it's not taking place during. So, it was just brilliant, creative writing. And just, it tells stories of the people involved. It's not like an overview. I mean, it tells people involved in all sorts of levels of the conflict, from being militarily involved and more. So, like I said, again, recommend it. Please check it out. Please check it out and give it a good read if you love zombies. And I know that anyone who's listening tonight must love zombies. Check it out. It is a definitely good read. It will pick your brain apart. No pun intended. Actually, that pun definitely intended.
So real quick, Pete, do you want us to mention the movie real quick and kind of compare the two?
Yeah. You can mention the movie, and then I'll offer up my opinion on the movie.
Okay. In all honesty, I really feel the movie was simply an attempt to keep pulling money out of. I would say rather. I don't want to say failed because it succeeded in that purpose, but an attempt to keep. I don't want to call it a franchise. It's more of a 2-book thing, but keep pulling money, keep pulling the hysteria out of it. From the very beginning, I mean, with, the old saying goes, the book is always better. So already off the bat, I can tell with a legendary book like World War Z, you really can't make a movie that's going to live up to standards of the book. That being said, I was very disappointed when they opted for the traditional, okay, here's the family that's going through the crisis, here's them going here and there and fighting their way through zombies and heartbreak when this person dies and, walking through dark halls and opening doors really slowly and all of a sudden a zombie jumps out at you, or, trying to walk real carefully to avoid zombies and not, draw attention. I mean, there's many unrealistic bits about the movie that were very, very key to the plot that weren't present in the novel at all. Such as the fact that, for one, zombies can run. In the book, they're your old typical slouching, moaning, zombie. And this, they're like it was like 28 Days Later. I mean, I said I haven't seen it, but I mean running zombies. In addition to that, I mean transforming in like literally 10 seconds. That's literally the time given by the movie. Is a zombie's bitten, transforms in 10 seconds. There were so many differences in political terms between the book and the movie. In the movie, I mean, there's some areas of the world that are infected and fall that don't in the book. I'm not going to say what, but I mean and there's like zombies of I don't know. I'm not going to ruin it, but there's key facets to the way that zombies behave in the movie that make absolutely no sense. I personally feel that they should have given it a shot. They should have tried to move away from the traditional, scary, like I said, walking through dark areas, avoiding zombies, and action. I mean, honestly, there really wasn't even all that much action. There wasn't a lot of zombie killing in the movie at all, really. There's a little bit, but I mean, not some long, drawn out battles or nothing like that. It was mostly, covert movements and, that kind of stuff. It's honestly, like I said, it was disappointing. I feel like I said they should have taken the high road, tried to do an untypical sort of, maybe documentary style, sort of like the way the book did. Pete, actually, what was your suggestion that you said would have, and I personally really agree, would have been a much better idea for this I want to say cinematic adaptation?
Oh, easily, without a doubt, the way you could have done it the best probably would have worked out the best would have absolutely been doing it as an episodic TV series. That's the only way you could have done it properly, was doing it so that each episode was a story from the novel. So, like, one day it would have been the storyline with Mets fan. Do you remember that one? I remember that. Yep. Yeah. You did a storyline with that, or you did a storyline with, say, the whole thing with Israel with the Palestinian family, and then like for big ones with say with the Battle of Yonkers and that whole the panic, the Great Panic, which is something I like to talk about actually. Which actually, did you know that was a commentary on the invasion about Iraq?
Really?
If you think about it, the Battle of Yonkers, it was a U.S. military which focused primarily on beating an enemy that was a conventional enemy like Russia. The entire U.S. military, from the end of World War II to the collapse of the Soviet Union up until now, or almost a few years ago, was developed to fight an enemy on a modern battlefield, tanks, airplanes, and then we invaded Iraq and encountered an enemy that we couldn't straight up fight on the battlefield. In World War Z, when the Battle of Yonkers happens, you see the U.S. military fighting an enemy that they're not used to fighting. So they show up with, howitzers, attack helicopters, and they have their soldiers dress up in full MOP gear, which is protection against nuclear biochemical agents. If you've ever seen it, they wear these giant suits with the gas masks and everything. And they also had this thing called Objective Force Warrior, which is where they have cameras on their guns and almost like a goggles where that you can see where everyone in your squad is doing. And how this backfires in the book is that the way a shell works is that it when it lands near you, it actually makes the liquids in your body kind of explode. Yeah, it's like some sort of shock. It's called and it also makes your nerves shut down. It's called I forget what it's called. It's sudden nerve trauma. That doesn't work against zombies unless it's a direct hit. So high explosive shells didn't really work against zombies. Second of all, they didn't account that if you shoot a zombie in the chest, he's gonna still keep coming. If you shoot a normal human being in the chest, they're going down with a 223 or whatever, gun, what have you. Another thing, they didn't account to how many people live in New York City, because the Battle of Yonkers is when they're trying to stem the tide of the horde from New York City. Last time I checked, New York City had a population of somewhere...
It was between 9 and 12 million, something like that?
No, it's actually 22 million people. So think about if 80% of that 22 million were zombies, and let's just assume that's about 18 million people. So imagine a horde of stretching from back into the city. Once the people could see this horde, the soldiers started getting scared. And once the zombies started getting up to the line, they just didn't. They were running out of bullets because they couldn't kill them, this and that, and it was just a disaster. So think about it. The zombies represent the insurgents in Iraq, an enemy we weren't prepared for fighting, and ended disastrously at first for the American forces, which we had to adapt and overcome. Did you think about that before?
Yeah, I mean, and in actuality, we in this fictional Battle of Yonkers came out with the express intent of shocking and awing the enemy, and that actually, literally, in the exact sense, backfired on us. The implications of the fact that, hey, these guys aren't dying, they're still coming at us. Wow, that guy just got his half his body blown off and he's still coming at me, or he got his torso blown off and he's still crawling towards me. I mean, just the fact, just thinking about that, frightens you. The fact that, hey, wow, we might not win this. The fact that you can see that the horde is stretching all the way back to, Times Square. All these things, are frightening. And you really got to think, if 1 out of every 3 bullets hits a zombie, and maybe 1 out of every 5 of those is a headshot, how many bullets is it really going to take to knock out, let's say, 10 million? Especially when the bodies and and corpses of zombies are protecting others. It's a mass of coagulated flesh. It's not as permeable as a regular human would be. You can't fire a high-powered round through a zombie, have it scatter, and and all the shrapnel embed itself in the chest of the shoulder behind it. It just doesn't work that way. You need to have 1 bullet for each and every head, and even at that, you still need a good 10 million rounds. And how many soldiers can you honestly really field for that? High-powered explosives and artillery, it's good for severing limbs, but when, like I said, when you're not full of fluid, when you're a mass of coagulated flesh, I mean, the only thing you can do is blow off limbs and watch them still come at you, unless it completely atomizes their body, destroys their head. I mean, they're still coming at you. And that was one of the big things about World War Z that I personally liked, is the fact that it delved into how our military structure as well as political structure and the geopolitical landscape all changed following this war. And I also like, personally, how Max Brooks figured these out in a rather logical manner. Figured, hey, this is what could happen, this is what probably would happen. One country would probably end up like this, so let me, put that here and there. And I mean, it ended up, being a very masterful work. Psychologically, everything seemed to be sound, in my opinion.
I mean, it's just, folks, you gotta listen to it. I'm sorry, you gotta listen to the show, but you gotta read this book. It's just brilliant stuff. So we're gonna take our last break, and then we'll stop, or we'll go into our favorite novels, or besides World War Z, our favorite books, movies, and video games about zombies, and then we'll call it for the evening. Just remember, you're welcome to call in at 714-364-4734, or click the little Skype button for our unscreened calls. Now, take a break on Phantom Nebula Radio. And welcome back, everybody, again. This time, I did not forget to unmute myself. Welcome back to Phantom Nebula Radio, the home of the extraterrestrial, the paranormal, the supernatural, the mysterious, and the unexplained. So, now that we're back, again, I'm going to mention you're welcome to call in at 714-364-4734. We have about 15 minutes remaining, but we are more than ever accommodating to guests or call-ins to who wants to share their opinion or their stories, or even their thoughts. You know, whatever's on your mind about the topic or anything about things that we would discuss on here. You're welcome to call right in. And so let's go on. I'm gonna ask Miguel. I'm gonna ask you, what would you say, besides World War Z, what would be your favorite zombie movie?
Favorite zombie movie? As I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's probably a little bit less on the serious side. I really like Zombieland, though. It's one of the few movies I was able to go and see multiple times while it was still in theaters, that I actually spent the money to go see it with multiple friends and family while it was in the theater. It combined, to me, it combined a strange sense of comedy and a very, very real sense of realism. Yet at the same time, it wasn't a crazy, overwhelming psychological thrill. Like, we gotta, be careful. We can only move at night. There's zombies everywhere. It more or less tried to focus on the world, not only the lawlessness of it, but just the way the world behaved following a zombie apocalypse. And that's one of the things that really fascinated me. I mean, honestly, my favorite thing about World War Z, just like little small details, is the fact that nobody was truly called by a name. They were only referred to as wherever their destination was, whether it was, Columbus, Ohio, or Tallahassee, Florida, things like that. You know what I mean? And that was why I really liked Zombieland, those little things that really gave you a feel for life after the zombie apocalypse.
I would have to say that my favorite, it's really hard because there's a lot of them that I really, really enjoy, and I would have to say Dawn of the Dead. I really, really, really like Dawn of the Dead. I think the original. The original had, the usual political implications of a normal George Romero movie, but it also had just the charm of being, just good plot, good action, good special effects for its time, for the 70s. I mean, it was excellent. The ending could have been much, much worse because the original ending. Did you see the original Dawn of the Dead?
I mean, to be honest, I've probably seen it, and it was probably years ago because I know for a fact I've seen bits and pieces, but nothing that I can accurately remember.
Well, the ending, the actual ending, they board the helicopter and leave, and because the guy's about to shoot himself, and she's about to just leave by herself because she's pregnant, so she wants to preserve the baby. So he decides at the last minute to have a second change of heart, runs up, kills zombies, jumps in the plane, and then they fly off into the sunset. The original ending was that he shoots himself. He's cornered by zombies. She throws herself into the helicopter blades, and then, while they're rolling the credits, the helicopter blades slowly stop turning, kind of insinuating that they didn't have enough fuel to even reach a destination. So it was a more nihilistic approach, but in order to keep their rating and also get the funding that they needed, they decided to change the original ending. We actually have a caller real quick, so let's just go to the caller real quick, and then on the last few minutes we have here. So, caller, you're on the air. Welcome to Phantom Nebula Radio.
Thanks. I'd probably say that my favorite zombie movie would have to be, 2012 Zombie Apocalypse?
I did watch
Danny Trejo?
Ironically enough, I did watch this with him. So, yes, Danny Trejo is in a zombie apocalypse movie, but go ahead.
Yeah, in all seriousness, it's a toss-up between either of the two of the Dawn of the Deads. Just because, like, I like the changes that the original made to cinema, and I just like the way that the new one, like, it made you, like, really feel for the characters. So it's like you got attached to these characters, and then, well, all except Dismal Dad, but and even still, you felt a little bad for him. But it's like you got attached to these characters, and when it's like you really want to see them make it out, and then especially if you watch the special features where they document the guy with the signs, I feel like it just completes the movie, kind of.
I would agree. There's a lot of very good zombie films, and that is absolutely definitely up there. I think. Oh, thank you for your call. Unless there's something that you had to add to that.
Oh no, that was it.
Thank you again for your call to Phantom Nebula Radio. Geez, there's so many zombie novels and books and culture. Oh, speaking of which, I wanted to talk about The Last of Us while I just remembered. If any of you who play video games or anything like that, there is a game that came out this year called The Last of Us. And
The Last of Us.
The idea behind it is that the cordyceps virus, which we talked about earlier in the show, fungus, jumps to humans, and it's freaky because it actually it controls your brain and you attack other people and everything. But what spreads it is that it starts to grow over your face and almost completely grow over you, and that's how, the older the zombie, the more overgrown it is. What it does is it actually spreads the spores, and that's actually what spreads the virus, which makes it even more dangerous because it's spreading spores, and unless you have a gas mask or whatever, then you're pretty much SOL. But the game is great. It's an emotional roller coaster because it's just, I don't even want to begin. I can't because I can't spoil it. I really would love for people to go and check it out if they do play video games or such and such. It's an emotional roller coaster, very well done writing, but just the brilliance of introducing a fungus-based infection that's based on a real fungus that takes over ants is just brilliant, and it's fantastic. You said Zombieland, correct? Is there any other ones that you can think of that you've seen? I just can't believe he mentioned 2012 Zombie Apocalypse, but because that movie he did neglect to mention though that not only was Danny Trejo in it, but LeVar Burton from Star Trek was in it. So there's that. But is there any other ones that you can think of, or even a zombie novel that you've seen before that you were interested in talking about? Because I've read a ton of zombie novels. If you take a look at my Kindle, I'm very addicted to zombie novels.
Well, to be honest, if I mention World War Z, I gotta mention the zombie survival hand guide book, whatever it was. I read that when I was on vacation one year, and I mean, it was definitely a good read. It was a very casual read in my opinion. It wasn't something where you had to, remember, names, remember, old stories. It wasn't something you had to follow a plot. It was just pretty much a collection of tips and guides onto how to survive and why you would want to do this immediately. Why would you want to do that? It was a very casual read. You can pick it up and put it down relatively quickly, and it's again in strength from the typical dramatic zombie novel movie format. It was literally just a guide. It was a guide in the most basic sense of the word. If you were to pick up a basic military or wilderness survival guide, it's essentially written in almost the same format. It's got a very simplistic design to it, and it's just a very interesting read. It explains to you, the best sort of weapons you would want to use, the way you would want to move, why, the things that you would want to do in order to not attract attention. what sort of foods and things you want to store. I mean, that sort of basic survival stuff. But it really gave you an idea of how to survive, and at the same time didn't put a crazy sense of it didn't instill a sense of fearing. I mean, obviously it's just a guide, but in doing so, it kind of it kept it really rationalized things is what I'm trying to get at. If you read World War Z, there's a lot of, like I said, political going on. There's a lot of implication on, how life was, how people were panicking, how their lives were so terrible. And the Zombie Survival Guide gave you a glimpse into the way the world was following World War Z, the way people thought, the way that this guide came out, supposedly in this fictional universe, to describe to you, this is what you want to do, this is why you, how you want to survive, without at the same time putting any dramatic emphasis on it. Besides, to be honest, I really haven't seen many older zombie movies. I'm not really a big, cinematic aficionado. I know of the whole 28 Days Later, series. I know of Night of the Living Dead. I know of Dawn of the Dead, and Shaun of the Dead as well. I know of the whole. I know the whole Resident Evil series, which honestly I'm really not a fan of. I'm really not a fan of Resident Evil, to be honest. I mean, my brother used to play it a lot when I was younger, but I really don't like it.
The original games were a big influence in starting the whole zombie culture. Like the first three were actually about zombies, and then you reached 4 and 5 and even 6, and it's not really about zombies anymore at that point, so it kind of defeats the purpose. But, something that I completely blew over, and those of you might retch when I mentioned Call of Duty, but it was a very big thing for a game like Call of Duty that was focused on, a war, like, World War II or such and such, to switch completely over and have Nazi zombies. I mean, I don't play Call of Duty anymore, but when I do play it, I want to just, focus my frustrations, just sit down and play something mindless. I'll sit down and I'll just enjoy my, play with my girlfriend or friends and to just shoot zombies for a little bit, and, that's fantastic. I don't know, have you actually played Nazi zombies?
I've played Call of Duty Zombies in Black Ops, and that was it, Black Ops 1. Besides that, I really don't have that well of an experience with them, because it's always very difficult finding, at least for me, someone else who's going to sit down with me and play it and actually survive past, like the first wave or so. And it just seems I'm sitting there and they're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Oh, God, there's a zombie behind me. Oh, God, I'm dead. Come over here, revive me. So,
no,
it happens to me a lot.
Yeah, it's just a total blast of a game, and I mean, it's just mindless fun. But there are several zombie novels that I've read other than World War Z that I really enjoyed. Bill was actually going to mention one called Feed, which was a really unique one because it focused more on the political side of things and the political ramifications of a zombie apocalypse more than the actual action kind of side. I actually owned it, and I lent it to him, and he ended up reading it, and I never read it because it never really interested me. I read, which is a really good one if everyone wants to check it out, called Day by Day Armageddon. It's written in a diary style of a Navy commander, or lieutenant commander, or such and such, and there's 2 sequels. The last one that came out a few months ago, almost about a year ago. Time flies. And if you like the whole diary style and you like the whole zombie apocalypse thing, it's a decent read. I read a Spanish novelist who just released one. I forget the name of it. I think it's like the Z Rising or something like that. I don't have the name in front of me, which is fantastic. I also read The Remaining, which is a series by J.D. Molly, which is a fantastic read. There's just so many zombie novels out there. They're just absolutely fantastic. But we're about our last 5 minutes, so I'm just going to wrap it up with closing segments. And I want to thank everyone for listening tonight. It was a fantastic run. And I love our return on the radio. I love doing this. So if you want to check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Phantom Nebula Radio. Give us a like there if you want to comment and tell us anything you want to see in a future episode you would like us to discuss. If you're ever interested in coming on the show to promote your book, promote your magazine, promote your new film, promote your documentary, anything you're interested in talking about, if you have a story, if you run a Bigfoot research group, anything that you can think of, you're more than welcome to come here and to come in and welcome to. We'd love to interview you and check us out. Again, thank you very much for tuning in, and you can check us out again next Monday at 9:30 Eastern yet again. And thank you for listening to Phantom Nebula Radio. Yet again, the home of the extraterrestrial, the paranormal, the supernatural, the mysterious, and the unexplained. Good night, folks. Have a good night.